In a quiet seaside village, young artist Joyce paints a street, but her canvas reveals chilling red stains, blood where water should be. As whispers of an old tragedy and a nervous couple swirl, Miss Marple unravels a hidden murder, proving the paintings hold the key to a deadly secret.
Chapter 1. The Artist's Arrival. The little Cornish village of St. Ives sparkled under the summer sun, its narrow streets winding down to a beach where waves crashed gently against the shore. Seagulls swooped overhead, their cries mixing with the salty breeze that carried the scent of fish and seaweed. The village was a picture of peace, with whitewashed cottages clinging to the hillside and fishing boats bobbing in the harbor. Into this quiet scene stepped Joyce Lempriere, a young artist with a bright smile and a heart full of dreams. Her paint-splattered satchel swung at her side, and her easel was tucked under her arm as she made her way to the Seaside Inn, a cozy little place perched above the shore. Joyce was 25, with curly brown hair tied loosely in a scarf and eyes that sparkled with curiosity. She'd come to St. Ives to paint, drawn by stories of its golden light and charming views. Her boots clicked on the cobblestones as she walked, her gaze darting to every corner. Flower baskets hanging from lamp-posts, children chasing each other near the docks, and old fishermen mending nets with weathered hands. She felt a thrill in her chest. This was the perfect spot to create something beautiful, something that would make people stop and stare. The Seaside Inn was small but welcoming, its sign creaking in the breeze. The front was painted pale blue, with ivy crawling up the walls, and a balcony overlooking the street. Joyce pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped inside, where the air smelled of polished wood and fresh bread. A plump woman with gray curls stood behind the counter, wiping her hands on an apron. "Welcome, dear," the woman said, her voice warm as a summer day. "You must be Miss Lempriere. I'm Mrs. Tuttle, the innkeeper. Got your room all ready upstairs?" Joyce grinned. "Thank you, Mrs. Tuttle. It's even prettier here than I imagined." Mrs. Tuttle chuckled, handing her a key. "Oh, St. Ives has a way of stealing hearts. You here to paint, then?" "Yes," Joyce said, her eyes lighting up. "The streets, the sea, everything's so alive. I can't wait to start." "Well, you'll have plenty to work with," Mrs. Tuttle said. "Settle in and I'll bring you some tea. Supper's at 7. Joyce climbed the narrow stairs to her room, a small space with a slanted ceiling and a window that framed the harbor like a painting. She dropped her satchel on the bed and flung open the window, letting the sea air rush in. Below, the street buzzed with life, vendors calling out, selling fresh fish, and tourists snapping photos. She could already see her first piece, the inn's front with its balcony and the street leading to the water. It would be perfect. After unpacking her paints and brushes, Joyce headed back downstairs, eager to explore. She stepped onto the street, her sketchbook tucked under her arm, and wandered toward the beach. The tide was low, leaving pools of water in the rocks where children poked at crabs with sticks. She sketched quickly, her pencil capturing the curve of the shore and the shapes of the boats. But it was the inn that kept pulling her attention. Something about its balcony, with its wrought iron railing and the way it caught the light, felt like the heart of the village. By late afternoon, Joyce had decided she'd paint the inn tomorrow. She returned to the inn for supper, where Mrs. Tuttle served a hearty meal of fish stew and crusty bread. At the table sat 2 other guests, a couple introduced as Dennis and Marjorie Dacre. Dennis was tall and handsome, with a wide smile and a voice that carried like he was used to being heard. He was an actor, he said, taking a break from the London stage. Marjorie, his wife, was quieter, with pale skin and dark eyes that seemed to look right through you. Her smile was tight, like it took effort. "Lovely place, isn't it?" Dennis said, leaning back in his chair. "We come here every summer. Nothing like the sea to clear your head." Joyce nodded, spooning stew. "It's my first time. I'm here to paint." "An artist," Dennis said, with his eyes twinkling. "You'll have to show us your work. Marjorie loves art, don't you, darling?" Marjorie's lips twitched. "Yes," she said softly, but her gaze stayed on her plate. Joyce felt a flicker of unease. There was something off about the couple, like a painting with one wrong color. But she brushed it aside. She was here to work, not to pry into strangers' lives. The next morning Joyce woke early, the sun streaming through her window. She dressed quickly, grabbed her easel, and headed to the street. She set up across from the inn where she could see the balcony and the cobblestone path leading to the beach. The morning light was perfect, soft and golden, making the white walls glow. On the balcony, 2 wet bathing suits hung on the railing, one blue, one red, dripping onto the stones below. They belonged to Dennis and Marjorie, she guessed, who must have gone for an early swim. Joyce mixed her paints, her brush moving quickly to capture the scene. She started with the inn's walls, then the balcony, the suits, and the street. Hours passed, the sun climbing higher, but she was lost in her work. Passers-by stopped to watch, murmuring compliments, but Joyce barely noticed. Her world was the canvas, the colors, the shapes coming to life. By noon, she stepped back to check her progress. The painting was good, really good. The inn looked real enough to step into, the street shimmering with light. But as she studied it, her heart skipped a beat. On the pavement, where the bathing suit's drips should be, were red stains. Not water, not paint. They looked like blood. Joyce blinked, her breath catching. She looked at the real street. The cobblestones were clean, no stains, no drips. She checked her paints. None had spilled. Her hands shook as she looked back at the painting. The red stains were still there, stark and bright, spreading across the painted street like a wound. "Miss Lempriere," Mrs. Tuttle's voice broke her trance. The innkeeper stood nearby, holding a tray with the teapot and a cup. "Thought you might like some tea. You've been out here for hours." Joyce forced a smile, her mind racing. "Thank you," she said, taking the cup. Her eyes flicked to the painting, then the street. "Mrs. Tuttle, has anything happened on this street? Anything bad?" Mrs. Tuttle frowned, tilting her head. "Bad? Not that I recall. St. Ives is as safe as they come. Why do you ask?" Joyce hesitated. She couldn't say it. Blood stains on a painting sounded mad. "Just curious," she said, sipping her tea. "Old villages always have stories, don't they?" Mrs. Tuttle laughed. "Oh, plenty of tales, but nothing grim, just fishermen's yarns and ghost stories to scare the tourists." She patted Joyce's shoulder and headed back to the inn. Joyce sat alone, staring at her painting. The stain seemed to pulse, almost alive. She told herself it was a trick of the light, or maybe her imagination. Artists saw things others didn't. That's what made them artists. But deep down, she felt a chill. Something wasn't right. That evening, Joyce joined Dennis and Marjorie for supper again. Dennis was all charm, telling stories of his theater days, but Marjorie was even quieter than before. Her eyes kept drifting to the window, as if she was waiting for something or someone. Joyce tried to focus on the conversation, but her mind was on the painting, locked away in her room. She hadn't dared to look at it again. After supper, she climbed the stairs and stood before the canvas. The stains were still there, unchanged. She touched the paint. It was dry, not wet like fresh blood. But it felt wrong, like the painting was trying to tell her something. She covered it with a cloth and went to bed, but sleep didn't come easily. The sound of the waves outside seemed louder, like whispers of a secret she wasn't meant to hear. The next day, Joyce tried to paint again, choosing a different view, the harbor, the boats, anything but the inn. But her hands wouldn't cooperate. Every stroke felt heavy, every color dull. By afternoon, she gave up and wandered the village, asking locals if they'd heard of any accidents or crimes on the inn street. Most shook their heads, puzzled. A few mentioned an old story, a woman who had drowned years ago, but no one knew details. Joyce's unease grew.
She didn't believe in ghosts, but the stains weren't normal. They were a clue, a puzzle, and puzzles she knew always had answers. She just had to find them. As the sun set, painting the sky red and gold, Joyce made a decision. She'd take her painting back to St. Mary Mead, to the Tuesday night club. If anyone could make sense of this mystery, it was Miss Marple. The old woman had a way of seeing through shadows, of finding truth where others saw only questions. Joyce packed her bags, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. Whatever those stains meant, she was going to find out.
Chapter 2. The Invisible Stains.
Chapter 3. Whispers in the Village. Joyce Lempriere stood in the heart of St. Ives, the morning sun warm on her face, but a cold knot of unease twisted in her stomach. The village hummed with life. Shopkeepers swept their steps, children darted through alleys, and the sea sparkled beyond the harbor. Yet her mind was on the painting locked in her room at the seaside inn, its red stains glaring like a warning she couldn't read. She checked the street again that morning, and the cobblestones were still clean, no trace of blood or anything else. The mystery was growing, and Joyce felt it pulling her deeper. She tucked her sketchbook under her arm and set out to learn more. If the stains meant something, the village might hold answers. She started at the post office, a tiny shop with a bell that jingled as she entered. Behind the counter, Miss Clara, a wiry woman with sharp eyes, was sorting letters. "Good morning," Joyce said, forcing a smile. "I'm Joyce, staying at the inn. I'm painting the village and heard about an old story, a drowning maybe. I thought it might inspire my work." Miss Clara's hands paused, her eyes narrowing. "An artist, eh? Well, St. Ives has its tales. You're likely thinking of Elsie Carter. Poor thing, drowned 10 years ago, out by the rocks. Everyone said it was an accident, but—" She leaned closer, her voice dropping. "Some reckoned it wasn't so simple." Joyce's pulse quickened. "Not simple? What do you mean?" Miss Clara glanced at the boar, as if checking for eavesdroppers. "Elsie was sweet, worked at the inn sometimes. Her fellow, John, was a rough sort, jealous, always picking fights. After she died, he left town quick. Folks wondered if he had a hand in it, but there was no proof." Joyce nodded, her mind racing. "Did anything happen near the inn street? Anything unusual?" "Not that I know," Miss Clara said, shrugging. "The inn's always been quiet. Why do you ask?" "Just curious," Joyce said, keeping her voice light. "Old stories make good paintings." Miss Clara snorted. "Well, stick to pretty views, love. Digging up the past can stir trouble." Joyce thanked her and stepped back into the street, her thoughts swirling. Elsie's story didn't fit the stains on her canvas. The drowning was too far from the end, but the talk of jealousy stuck with her like a shadow she couldn't shake. She thought of Dennis and Marjorie Dacre, the couple at the inn. Dennis's easy charm, Marjorie's quiet tension, it felt familiar, like an echo of Elsie's tale. She wandered toward the market, where stalls sold fish, bread, and trinkets. The air smelled of salt and smoked herring. Joyce stopped at a fruit stall where a round-faced woman named Mrs. Curnow was stacking apples. "Morning," Joyce said, picking up an apple. "I'm Joyce, an artist. I'm painting the seaside inn and heard about an old story, a drowning maybe. I thought it might inspire my work." Mrs. Curnow's smile faded. "I suppose it's Elsie Carter? Poor thing, drowned one night, out by the harbor rocks. They said it was an accident, but—" She hesitated, glancing around. Her man, John, was trouble. Drank too much, got mean. Some thought he pushed her, but the police found nothing. Joyce's fingers tightened on the apple. "Was there ever anything strange near the inn, on the street outside?" Mrs. Curnow frowned. "Not that I recall. The inn's a nice place, always has been. You're asking odd questions for an artist." Joyce laughed, trying to sound casual. "Just looking for inspiration. Thanks for the apple." She paid and moved on, her mind buzzing. Everyone knew Elsie's story, but it didn't explain the stains. Still, the whispers of jealousy and trouble felt important, like pieces of a puzzle she couldn't yet see. She decided to try one more person, old Tom, the fisherman she'd met yesterday. Maybe he'd remembered something new. She found him at the docks, sitting on his crate, his hands busy with a net.
The sea glittered behind him, and gulls screeched overhead. "Back again, miss?" he said, squinting at her. "Still chasing ghosts?" Joyce smiled, sitting on a nearby crate. "Maybe. I heard more about Elsie Carter. People say her boyfriend was jealous. Do you think he did something to her?" Old Tom's fingers slowed, his eyes distant. "John was a bad sort, no doubt, always yelling at Elsie, especially when she talked to other men. Night she died, they'd been fighting, folks said. But the police called it an accident. Tide was rough, rocks were slippery. No marks on her, just water in her lungs." Joyce leaned forward. "Was there ever anything on the inn street? Any accidents or fights?" He shook his head. "Not that I know. The inn street is just for tourists and fishermen passing through. Why are you so fixed on it?" Joyce bit her lip. She couldn't tell him about the painting. It sounded too strange. "Just a feeling. Thanks, Tom." As she walked back to the inn, Joyce felt the weight of her questions. The village was full of whispers, but none matched the red stains on her canvas. She needed to talk to someone closer to the inn, someone who might know more. Dennis and Marjorie were her best chance. At the inn, Joyce found the couple in the dining room, finishing lunch. Dennis was laughing, his voice loud, while Marjorie picked at her food, her face pale. Joyce sat across from them, her heart pounding. "Afternoon," Dennis said, flashing his actor's smile. "How's the painting going?" "Slowly," Joyce said, watching Marjorie. "I've been asking around about the village. People mentioned a drowning. Elsie Carter? Did you ever hear about it?" Marjorie's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Her eyes flicked to Joyce, then to Dennis, who leaned back, still smiling. "Old tragedies," he said. "Every village has them. Probably just a sad accident." Marjorie set her fork down, her hands trembling slightly. "It's not a nice story," she said, her voice low. "Why bring it up?" "I thought it might inspire a painting," Joyce lied, her eyes on Marjorie's face. The woman looked shaken, her lips tight. Dennis reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Let's not dwell on gloom," Dennis said, his tone light but his eyes sharp. "Joyce, you should paint the harbor, much cheerier." Joyce nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. Marjorie's reaction was too strong, too quick. Did she know something about Elsie? Or was it something else? Something about the inn, the street, the stains? That afternoon, Joyce tried to paint again, setting up by the inn's front. The balcony was empty, the street quiet. She mixed her colors carefully, watching every stroke. No red, no mistakes. But when she stepped back, her heart sunk. The stains were there again, creeping across the painted cobblestones, bright and bold. She checked the street, clean. Her paints, no red. Her brushes, clean. It was impossible, but it was happening. She covered the new painting and carried it to her room, locking it with the first one. Her hands shook as she sat on the bed, staring at the covered canvases. The stains weren't just a trick. They were a message, a clue to something dark. But what? Elsie's drowning? Something with Dennis and Marjorie? Or something she hadn't found yet? Joyce thought of St. Mary Mead, of the Tuesday night club. Miss Marple's quiet wisdom, her way of seeing through lies, was what she needed. She couldn't stay in St. Ives much longer. The mystery was too big, too strange. Tomorrow she'd talk to Dennis and Marjorie one more time, then head home. The paintings were coming with her, stains and all. If anyone could solve this, it was Miss Marple. As night fell, Joyce lay awake, the sound of the waves loud in her ears. The village was hiding something, and the stains were its voice. She just had to listen.
Chapter 4. The Tuesday Night Gathering. Joyce Lempriere sat by the window of her cozy St. Mary Mead cottage, the two paintings from St. Ives leaning against the wall, still wrapped in cloth. The quiet village, with its neat gardens and chirping birds, felt a world away from the salty breeze and bustling streets of St. Ives. Yet the mystery of the red stains followed her, heavy as a storm cloud. She'd returned from the seaside village yesterday, her mind buzzing with questions no one in St. Ives could answer. Tonight, she hoped the Tuesday night club would help her unravel the puzzle. The clock struck 6, and Joyce gathered her paintings, her heart thumping. The club met at Miss Marple's cottage, a short walk down the lane. She pulled on her coat, tucked the canvases under her arm, and stepped into the cool evening. The sky was turning pink, and the village was settling into its usual calm, with lights glowing in windows and the smell of wood smoke in the air. Miss Marple's cottage was warm and inviting, with a fire crackling in the hearth and a tray of tea and scones on the table. The Tuesday night club was already there. Sir Henry Clithering, a retired detective with a kind smile, Dr. Haydock, the village doctor, puffing on his pipe, Mrs. Bantry, chattering about her garden, and Raymond West, Miss Marple's nephew, scribbling in a notebook. Miss Marple herself sat in her armchair, knitting needles clicking, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. "Joyce, dear," Miss Marple said, looking up, "you're just in time. Come, sit. You look like you've brought us a story." Joyce set the paintings against the wall and took a seat, her hands fidgeting. "I have," she said. "Something strange happened in St. Ives, and I need your help to make sense of it." Sir Henry leaned forward, his eyes twinkling. "A mystery! Splendid! Let's hear it." Joyce took a deep breath and began. She told them about St. Ives, the seaside inn, and her first painting of the inn street. She described the red stains that appeared on the canvas, like blood, even though the real street was clean. She mentioned the second painting, where the stains appeared again, and her talks with the villagers, Mrs. Pellow, Old Tom, Miss Clara, about Elsie Carter's drowning 10 years ago. She spoke of Dennis and Marjorie Dacre, the couple at the inn, and the uneasy feeling they gave her, especially Marjorie's quiet fear and Dennis's too perfect charm. When she finished, the room was silent, except for the crackle of the fire. Joyce uncovered the paintings and propped them up. The red stains stood out, stark and bright, against the painted cobblestones. The club leaned closer, their faces a mix of curiosity and unease. "Goodness," Mrs. Bantry said, her eyes wide. "Those stains do look like blood. How peculiar." Dr. Haydock puffed his pipe, frowning. "Could it be a trick of the paint? Some chemical reaction?" Joyce shook her head. "I checked my paints. No red. My brushes were clean. And it happened twice on 2 different canvases." Raymond West tapped his pen against his notebook. "Fascinating. It's almost like the paintings are haunted. Perhaps a ghostly message." Miss Marple's needles paused, her lips twitching into a small smile. "Now, Raymond, let's not jump to ghosts. There's always a simpler explanation if you look closely." She turned to Joyce. "Tell me, dear, about this couple, Dennis and Marjorie. What did you notice about them?" Joyce thought back. Dennis was friendly, always talking like he wanted everyone to like him. He's an actor, so he's good at it. But Marjorie, she was different, quiet, nervous. She barely looked at him, and when I mentioned Elsie's drowning, she got upset, like it hit a nerve. Sir Henry nodded. "Sounds like tension between them. And this Elsie Carter, did the villagers think her death was suspicious?" "Yes," Joyce said. "They said her boyfriend John was jealous and mean. Some thought he might have caused her death, but there was no proof. It was ruled an accident." Mrs. Bantry clapped her hands. "Oh, it's like a novel! A jealous lover, a mysterious death, and now these stains. Do you think the paintings are showing Elsie's blood?" Miss Marple tilted her head, her eyes on the canvases. "Perhaps, but Elsie drowned by the harbor, not near the inn. The stains are on the inn street, in Joyce's paintings. That suggests something closer to the inn itself."
Dr. Haydock leaned back, puffing smoke. Could it be an optical illusion? The way the light hits the canvas, maybe? Joyce shook her head again. I thought that at first, but the stains are part of the paint. They're dry, fixed, and they only show up on the street, not anywhere else. Raymond grinned. What if it's a prank? Someone sneaking red paint onto your canvas when you're not looking? Joyce frowned. I was alone when I painted, and the stains appeared while I was working. No one could have done it without me seeing. The room fell quiet again. Miss Marple's needles clicked steadily, her eyes thoughtful. Tell me, Joyce, she said, about the balcony. You mentioned bathing suits hanging there, dripping. Did you paint those drips? Yes, Joyce said. They were water, from Dennis and Marjorie's suits, but in the painting they turned into these red stains. Miss Marple nodded slowly. Interesting. Water to blood. In my experience, things that seem supernatural often have a very human explanation. Village life, you see, is full of little secrets, jealousies, fears, hidden truths. Like Mrs. Grayson in our village, who thought her neighbor was poisoning her roses when it was only bad soil. Sir Henry chuckled. You're right, Jane. There's always a human angle. Joyce, did anyone at the inn act oddly about your painting? Joyce thought back. Of Marjorie's trembling hands, Dennis's quick smile. Marjorie seemed scared when I brought up Elsie. Dennis just laughed it off, but it felt forced, like he was hiding something. Miss Bantry gasped. Do you think Dennis did something to Marjorie? Maybe the stains are a warning. Dr. Haydock raised an eyebrow. Let's not get carried away. We need facts. Joyce, did you notice anything else at the inn? Anything out of place? Joyce hesitated. There was a knife missing from the kitchen. Mrs. Tuttle, the innkeeper, mentioned it one morning, said it was odd since it was her favorite. I didn't think much of it then. Miss Marple's eyes sharpened. A knife missing. That's worth noting. And these bathing suits? Did you see Dennis or Marjorie swimming? Joyce nodded. They said they swam every morning. Their suits were always wet, hanging on the balcony. The old woman leaned back, her knitting resting in her lap. Very curious. Joyce, your paintings are telling us something, but we mustn't jump to conclusions. Let's think. What do we know? A young artist paints a street and sees blood where there should be water. A couple at the inn acts strangely. An old tragedy lingers in the village's memory. It's like a tangle of yarn. We need to find the right thread to pull. Sir Henry grinned. Jane, you make it sound so simple. Any theories yet? Miss Marple smiled. Not yet, Henry, but I will say this. Paintings don't lie, but people do. Joyce, keep those canvases safe. They may be more important than we realize. Joyce felt a spark of hope. The club's questions, especially Miss Marple's quiet observations, made the mystery feel less overwhelming. It was still strange, still unsettling, but she wasn't alone anymore. Thank you, she said. I knew you'd help. Mrs. Bantry poured more tea, her voice bright. Oh, this is exciting! I can't wait to hear what happens next. Joyce, you must tell us if anything else turns up. As the club chatted, tossing around ideas, ghosts, pranks, old crimes, Joyce glanced at Miss Marple. The old woman was knitting again, her face calm, but her eyes were sharp, like she was already piecing the puzzle together. Joyce felt a shiver. Whatever the stains meant, Miss Marple would find it. For now, Joyce would wait, watch, and trust the club to help her uncover the truth.
Chapter 5. Shadows of Suspicion. The fire in Miss Marple's cottage flickered, casting soft shadows across the room as the Tuesday night club leaned forward, their eyes on Joyce Lempriere. The two paintings from St. Ives stood against the wall, their red stains glowing in the lamplight like accusations. Joyce had just finished recounting her strange experience, the mysterious blood-like marks on her canvases, the whispers of Elsie Carter's drowning, and the uneasy feeling she got from Dennis and Marjorie Dacre at the seaside inn. The club was buzzing with ideas, and the air felt thick with questions. Sir Henry Clithering rubbed his chin, his detective's mind at work. "Let's lay it out," he said. "We've got a painting that shows blood where there should be water, a village with an old tragedy, and a couple acting oddly. Joyce, you're sure those stains aren't your doing?" Joyce nodded, her hands clasped tightly. "I'm sure. No red paint on my palette, no spills, nothing. And it happened twice. 2 different paintings, same stains." Mrs. Bantry shivered, clutching her tea. "It's eerie, like the paintings are trying to tell you something. Maybe it's about Elsie Carter's drowning. What if her spirit is pointing to the inn?" Raymond West, scribbling in his notebook, grinned. "A ghost painter? That's a story I could sell. But seriously, Joyce, could someone have tampered with your canvases? A prank, maybe?" Joyce shook her head. "I was alone both times, and the stains appeared while I was painting. No one could have touched them without me seeing." Dr. Haydock puffed his pipe, his brow furrowed. "Let's stick to facts. The stains look like blood, but they're paint. The street is clean, so it's not a real crime scene. And this Elsie Carter drowned far from the inn. The connection's shaky." Miss Marple's knitting needles clicked steadily, her eyes thoughtful. "Perhaps," she said softly, "the connection isn't Elsie at all. Joyce, tell me more about Dennis and Marjorie. You said Marjorie seemed nervous. How so?" Joyce thought back to the inn, picturing Marjorie's pale face. "She was quiet, almost jumpy. She barely spoke, and when she did, it was sharp, like she was holding something back. When I mentioned Elsie's drowning, she dropped her cup and left the table. Dennis laughed it off, but his eyes were cold." Sir Henry raised an eyebrow. "Cold, you say? That's interesting. Actors are good at hiding things. Maybe he's hiding more than a bad marriage." Mrs. Bantry gasped. "You don't think Dennis did something to Marjorie, do you? Those stains could be a warning. What if she's in danger?" Dr. Haydock chuckled. "Dolly, you're turning this into a melodrama. We don't even know if there's a crime. For all we know, Joyce's paints got mixed up." Joyce frowned. "They didn't. I checked everything. Palette, brushes, all clean. And the stains only show up on the street, under the balcony where their bathing suits were dripping." Miss Marple's needles paused, her voice quiet but sharp. "The bathing suits," she said. "You said they were wet, dripping water. And in your painting, that water became blood. That's a curious change, isn't it?" Joyce nodded, a chill running through her. "Yes, it's like the painting turned something harmless into something awful." Raymond leaned forward, his eyes bright. "Let's brainstorm. Theory 1, the stains are a message about Elsie's death, some clue we're missing. Theory 2, they're about Dennis and Marjorie. Maybe Dennis is up to something shady. Theory 3, it's just a fluke, a trick of the light or paint." Mrs. Bantry waved her hand. "Oh, it's not a fluke. Paintings don't just make themselves. I say it's Dennis. He sounds too charming, and charming men are always trouble." Sir Henry laughed. "Not always, Dolly. But I agree, Dennis is worth a closer look. Joyce, did you notice anything else about him or Marjorie? Any odd habits?" Joyce thought hard. "Dennis was always talking, telling stories about his theater days. He liked being the center of attention. Marjorie was the opposite. She'd sit there, twisting her napkin or staring out the window. Once I saw her flinch when Dennis touched her hand." Miss Marple tilted her head. "Flinch, you say? That's telling. In my village, we had a young woman, Mary, who acted much the same around her husband. Turned out he was bullying her, poor thing. People hide their fears, but the body shows it." Dr. Haydock nodded. "Fear could explain Marjorie's behavior, but what about the stains? They're the real puzzle. Joyce, you said the Mrs. Tuttle mentioned a missing knife." "Yes," she said. "She was upset about it, said it was her favorite. I didn't see it myself, but she noticed it was gone one morning." Sir Henry's eyes narrowed.
A missing knife is no small thing. Could be nothing, a guest took it by mistake, or it could be something darker. Mrs. Bantry's eyes widened. Dark! You mean like a murder? Oh, Joyce, what if those stains are real blood and someone's covering it up? Raymond snorted. Dolly, you're jumping to murder already. We need more evidence. Joyce, did you ask Dennis or Marjorie about the knife? No, she admitted. I didn't want to seem nosy, and after the stains I was too rattled to think straight. Miss Marple set her knitting down, her gaze steady. Let's consider what we have. A painting shows blood where there should be water. A couple at the inn act strangely, one charming, one afraid. A knife is missing, and an old tragedy, Elsie Cotter's drowning, lingers in the village's memory, though it happened far from the inn. It's like a quilt with mismatched patches. We need to find the thread that ties them together. Sir Henry leaned back, smiling. Jane, you always make it sound so tidy. Any ideas where to start? Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. Not yet, Henry, but I will say this. Paintings don't create themselves, and stains don't appear by magic. Someone or something is behind this. Joyce, did you notice anything else at the inn? Anything small, even if it seemed unimportant? Joyce hesitated, sifting through her memories. There was one thing. The morning I painted the second canvas, I saw Dennis on the balcony talking to someone on the phone. He sounded angry, but I couldn't hear the words. Marjorie was inside, looking out the window, and she seemed sad. Miss Marple nodded. Anger and sadness. Those are strong emotions, and they often hide secrets. In my experience, people who seem perfect, like Dennis, are often the ones with the most to conceal. Mrs. Bantry clapped her hands. I knew it! Dennis is the key. Maybe he's planning something awful, and the paintings are a sign. Dr. Haydock rolled his eyes. Or maybe he's just a loud actor with a bad temper. Joyce, did you check the inn street again after the second painting? Yes, she said. It was clean just like the first time. No stains, no drips, nothing. Raymond tapped his pen. So the mystery's in the paintings, not the street. Maybe we should focus there. Joyce, have you tried painting the inn again to see if it happens a third time? Joyce shook her head. I couldn't. After the second time, I was too shaken. I packed up and came here. Miss Marple's voice was gentle. And you did right, dear. You've brought us a fine puzzle. For now, keep those paintings safe. They're our best clue. I suspect the answer lies not in St. Ives' past, but in its present, perhaps with our charming actor and his nervous wife. The club continued tossing ideas around. Ghostly warnings, hidden crimes, even a theory from Raymond about cursed paint. But Joyce's eyes kept drifting to Miss Marple, who was knitting again, her face calm, but her mind clearly at work. Joyce felt a spark of hope. The stains were still a mystery, but with the club's help, especially Miss Marple's sharp mind, she was closer to the truth. For now, she'd wait, listen, and trust that the shadows of suspicion would soon give way to answers.
Chapter 6. The Shocking Discovery. The fire in Miss Marple's cottage had died to embers, casting a soft glow over the Tuesday night club as they leaned forward, their faces a mix of excitement and unease. Joyce Lempriere's paintings from St. Ives stood against the wall, their red stains stark under the lamplight, like a silent scream. The group had just dissected Joyce's tale, the mysterious blood-like marks, the whispers of Elsie Carter's drowning, and the strange behavior of Dennis and Marjorie Dacre at the seaside inn. Now the conversation turned to theories, and Joyce felt the weight of the mystery pressing harder. Sir Henry Clithering tapped his fingers on his knee. "Let's piece it together," he said. "We've got stains that appear only in Joyce's paintings, a missing knife from the inn, and a couple with tension you could cut with a blade. Then there's Elsie Carter's drowning, 10 years old and far from the inn.
Joyce, you're sure Marjorie reacted strongly to Elsie's name? Joyce nodded, her hands clasped. Yes, she dropped her cup and left the table. It was like I'd struck a nerve. Mrs. Bantry's eyes widened. Oh, it's chilling. What if Marjorie knows something about Elsie? Or what if Dennis is hiding a secret and the paintings are pointing to it? Raymond West, scribbling in his notebook, grinned. Maybe it's a psychological trick. Joyce, could your mind be painting what you're afraid of? Blood instead of water, like a fear of something bad happening? Joyce frowned. I don't think so. I wasn't scared when I started painting, just excited. The stains came out of nowhere. Dr. Haydock puffed his pipe. Let's not get lost in theories. We need more facts. Joyce, you said the stains look like blood, but are paint. Have you tried scraping them off, seeing what's underneath? I haven't, Joyce admitted. I was too rattled to touch them, but they're dry, part of the canvas. It's not like they're fresh. Miss Marple's knitting needles clicked, her eyes on the paintings. Very curious, she said softly. Water turning to blood, a missing knife, a nervous wife. It reminds me of Mrs. Taylor in our village, whose husband seemed so charming, but she flinched at his touch. There was a story there, hidden in plain sight. Sir Henry leaned forward. Jane, you're hinting at something? Care to share? Miss Marple smiled. Not yet, Henry, but I think Joyce's paintings are telling us about the present, not the past. Let's go back to St. Ives, Joyce. Tell us about the last day you saw Dennis and Marjorie. Joyce closed her eyes, picturing the inn. It was my last morning there. I'd painted the second canvas and the stains appeared again. I was shaken, so I didn't paint anymore. I saw Dennis and Marjorie at breakfast. Dennis was his usual self, loud, charming, telling stories. Marjorie was quieter than ever, barely eating. She kept looking at the balcony where their bathing suits were hanging again, dripping water. Mrs. Bantry gasped, The suits again! That's where the stains show up in your paintings. Maybe they're the key. Dr. Haydock nodded. Could be. Joyce, did anything happen that day? Anything out of the ordinary? Joyce hesitated, sifting through her memories. There was something... After breakfast, I heard Mrs. Tuttle, the innkeeper, talking to a policeman in the kitchen. I couldn't catch much, but she mentioned Marjorie, something about her not looking well. Later, I saw Dennis on the phone again, outside, sounding angry. Marjorie was on the balcony, staring at the sea. She looked lost. Miss Marple's needles paused. Lost, you say? And the policeman, what was he doing there? I don't know. I left for St. Mary Mead that afternoon, so I didn't ask. But it felt odd, like something was brewing. Sir Henry's eyes narrowed. A policeman at the inn is no small thing. Joyce, did you hear anything about Marjorie after you left? Any news from St. Ives? Joyce shook her head. I came straight here. I was too focused on the paintings to check. Raymond snapped his fingers. We need more information. What if Marjorie happened something? What if those stains are about her, not Elsie? Mrs. Bantry clutched her tea. Oh, that's awful. You don't think Dennis hurt her, do you? The stains, the knife, her fear, it all fits. Miss Marple's voice was calm but firm. Let's not jump ahead, Dolly, but I agree we need facts. Joyce, your paintings are our best clue, but we must know more about Dennis and Marjorie. Their story may hold the answer. The room fell silent, the weight of the mystery settling over them. Then Raymond set his notebook down, his face serious. I have a friend in Cornwall who might know something. I'll send a telegram tomorrow, ask about the inn, Marjorie, anything recent. Joyce, can you stay a few days? Joyce nodded. Yes, I need to know what this means. The next morning, Raymond's telegram brought news that hit like a wave. His friend, a journalist in St. Ives, replied with a shocking report. Marjorie Dacre had been found dead 2 days ago, washed up on the rocks near the harbor. The police called it a drowning, an accident, but the village was buzzing with whispers. Some said Marjorie had been acting strange, pale and quiet before she died. Others mentioned Dennis, who'd left town the day after her body was found. The club gathered again that evening, the air heavy with the news. Joyce's hand shook as she set up her paintings. "It can't be a coincidence," she said. "The stains, Marjorie's fear, now this? My paintings knew something was wrong." Mrs. Bantry's eyes widened. "It's like they predicted it. Oh, Joyce, what if she saw her death before it happened?" Dr. Haydock frowned. "Let's not get mystical. Drownings happen, especially near the sea, but the timing is odd, and Dennis leaving town raises questions." Sir Henry nodded. "Agreed. Joyce, tell us again about Marjorie's behavior. Anything that stands out now knowing she's gone." Joyce thought back, her heart heavy. She was scared, I'm sure of it. The way she flinched from Dennis, the way she stared at the sea, like she was waiting for something. And when I mentioned Elsie's drowning, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. Miss Marple's eyes were sharp. 2 drownings, 10 years apart, both tied to the inn. And your paintings, Joyce, showing blood where there should be water. It's a pattern, but not a simple one. I think of Mr. Jenkins in our village, whose wife fell ill suddenly. Everyone thought it was natural, but it wasn't. Sometimes the simplest explanation hides the darkest truth. Raymond leaned forward. "You're saying Marjorie's death wasn't an accident, that Dennis might have—" Miss Marple didn't answer directly, her needles clicking again. "We need more facts, but I will say this. Paintings don't lie, and fear doesn't come from nothing. Joyce, your paintings are pointing to something real, something human." Sir Henry rubbed his hands. "Right, let's assume Marjorie's death is suspicious. The stains could be a clue to how she died. Joyce, you said the police were at the inn. Could they have been investigating something already?" Joyce shrugged, feeling helpless. "I don't know. I left too soon. But Mrs. Tuttle seemed worried about Marjorie." Mrs. Bantry's voice trembled. "What if Dennis used that missing knife? What if the stains are showing blood he spilled, and the drowning was a cover-up?" Miss Marple's voice was gentle. "Possible, Dolly, but we must be careful. Blood in a painting isn't blood in the sea. Still, the knife is important, and Dennis's sudden departure, that's telling." Joyce looked at the paintings, the red stains glaring. "What do I do now? I feel like I'm part of this, like the paintings chose me." Miss Marple smiled, her eyes kind. "You've done well, Joyce, bringing this to us. Keep your paintings safe and your eyes open. The truth is close, I think. We just need one more piece to make it clear." As the club debated, murder, accident, or something stranger, Joyce felt a mix of fear and hope. Marjorie's death was a shock, but it made the stains feel real, urgent. Miss Marple's calm certainty was a lifeline. Whatever the paintings meant, Joyce trusted the old woman to find the truth hidden in the shadows of suspicion.
Chapter 7. Miss Marple's Revelation. The air in Miss Marple's cottage was thick with tension, the fire's glow casting long shadows across the room. The Tuesday night club sat in a tight circle, their eyes darting between Joyce Lempriere's paintings and the old woman knitting quietly in her armchair. The red stains on the canvases seemed to pulse under the lamplight, a silent challenge to unravel their meaning. The news of Marjorie Dacre's death, a drowning near the St. Ives harbor, ruled an accident, had stunned the group. Whispers of Dennis Dacre's sudden departure and the missing knife from the seaside inn hung heavy like fog over the sea. Joyce's hands twisted in her lap, her heart pounding as she waited for answers. Sir Henry Clithering leaned forward, his detective's eyes sharp. "Let's recap," he said. "Joyce's paintings show blood where water should be, tied to the inn's balcony. Marjorie is dead, drowned, just like Elsie Carter 10 years ago. Dennis, her charming husband, skips town, and there's a missing knife. It's a puzzle, but it's starting to look like more than a coincidence." Mrs. Bantry clutched her tea, her voice trembling. "It's awful! Those stains must be Marjorie's blood, showing what Dennis did. He killed her, didn't he? Covered it up as a drowning?" Raymond West, scribbling in his notebook, raised an eyebrow. "Hold on, Dolly. We've got no proof of murder yet. The police called it an accident. Maybe the stains are Joyce's imagination, a trick of her artist's mind." Joyce shook her head, her voice firm. "They're not. I checked my paints, my brushes. Nothing red. The stains appeared on their own, twice. They're real, and they mean something." Dr. Haydock puffed his pipe, frowning. "Real or not, they're paint, not blood. And Marjorie drowned. No wounds, no blood reported. The knife could be a red herring. Maybe it just got misplaced." Miss Marple's needles clicked steadily, her eyes on her knitting, but her mind clearly elsewhere. "Perhaps," she said softly, "but a missing knife is never just misplaced in a story like this. Joyce, tell me again about Dennis and Marjorie's behavior that last day. Every detail matters." Joyce closed her eyes, picturing the inn. Dennis was his usual self, loud, charming, telling stories at breakfast. Marjorie was quiet, pale, barely touching her food. She kept glancing at the balcony, where their bathing suits were dripping. When I mentioned Elsie Carter's drowning, Marjorie flinched, like the name scared her. Later, I heard Mrs. Tuttle talking to a policeman about Marjorie looking unwell, and Dennis was on the phone, sounding angry. Miss Marple nodded, her lips pursed. "And the paintings, always the stains under the balcony where water dripped. That's the key, I think. Water to blood. It's like a message, but not a ghostly one. Human nature, you see, is often the answer to these mysteries." Sir Henry grinned. "Jane, you've got that look. You've figured something out, haven't you? Care to let us in?" Miss Marple set her knitting down, her eyes twinkling. "I believe so, Henry, but let's work through it together. Joyce's paintings show blood where there should be water. Marjorie is dead, drowned, with no blood involved. Dennis has fled, and a knife is missing. It's a puzzle, but it's starting to look like more than a coincidence." Mrs. Bantry gasped. "Dennis! He's the link. He killed Marjorie, just like John killed Elsie years ago. The stains are showing his crime." Dr. Haydock raised an eyebrow. "Dolly, you're leaping again. No evidence of blood in Marjorie's death. The police found nothing suspicious. No cuts, no wounds." Miss Marple tilted her head. "No wounds, perhaps, but that doesn't mean no crime. In my village, there was a man, Mr. Potter, whose wife died suddenly. Everyone thought it was her heart, but it was poison, slipped into her tea. No marks, no blood, just a quiet death. I wonder." Joyce's heart skipped. "Poison? You think Dennis poisoned Marjorie?" Miss Marple's voice was calm but firm. "Let's consider the facts. Marjorie was nervous, pale, flinching from her husband. Dennis was angry on the phone, then left town after her death. The paintings show blood, not water, under the balcony where their suits dripped, and a knife is missing, though no one was stabbed. What does that suggest?" Raymond snapped his fingers. "A cover-up. The knife wasn't used. It's a distraction. Dennis did something to Marjorie, and the paintings are pointing to it, symbolically." Miss Marple nodded. "Exactly, Raymond. The stains aren't literal blood. They're a sign, a clue to something hidden. Joyce, your artist's eye saw what others missed. The drips from the bathing suits, the tension between Dennis and Marjorie, the missing knife, all pieces of a puzzle." Sir Henry leaned back, his eyes narrowing. "Brilliant, Jane. But we need proof.
Dennis is gone and the police closed the case. How do we tie the stains to poison? Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. We start with the inn. Joyce, you said Mrs. Tuttle spoke to a policeman about Marjorie's health, and Dennis was angry on the phone. I suggest we ask Raymond's friend in St. Ives to dig deeper. Check if Marjorie was seen with anyone else, or if Dennis bought anything unusual, like medicine or herbs. Raymond nodded, grabbing his pen. I'll send another telegram tomorrow. If there's a trail, my friend will find it. Dr. Haydock puffed his pipe, and the paintings? They're evidence in a way. Joyce, you should keep them safe. They might show more than we think. Joyce felt a surge of hope. I will. Miss Marple, do you really think Dennis did it? Miss Marple's voice was gentle. I think, dear, that people like Dennis, charming, controlling, often hide dark hearts. Your paintings saw it before you did. Now we must prove it. As the club planned their next steps, Joyce looked at the canvases. The stains no longer felt like a curse. They were a guide, leading her to the truth. Miss Marple's revelation had turned suspicion into certainty. Dennis was the key, and the paintings were the lock. All they needed was one final piece to open it.
Chapter 8. A Satisfying Resolution. The fire in Miss Marple's cottage burned low, its soft crackle filling the quiet as the Tuesday night club sat in a tight circle. Joyce Lempriere's paintings leaned against the wall, their red stains glowing faintly under the lamplight, no longer a mystery, but a beacon of truth. The news of Marjorie Dacre's drowning, Dennis Dacre's sudden departure, and Miss Marple's theory of poison had set the room alight with purpose. Joyce's heart pounded, not with fear now, but with hope. The truth was close. She could feel it. Sir Henry Clithering leaned forward, his eyes sharp. Jane, you've laid it out neatly. Dennis, poison, a cover-up as drowning. The paintings point to it, symbolically, but we need evidence. Raymond, any word from your friend in St. Ives? Raymond set his notebook down, his face serious. Yes, I got a telegram this morning. My friend, Tom, dug into things. The police in St. Ives reopened Marjorie's case after whispers in the village. They found something odd. A bottle of sleeping pills, half empty, in Dennis's luggage, left behind at the inn. Marjorie's autopsy showed traces of those pills in her system, enough to make her drowsy, maybe too weak to swim. Mrs. Bantry gasped, her tea forgotten. Poison! Just like you said, Jane! Dennis drugged her before she went into the water. Dr. Haydock nodded, puffing his pipe. Clever. Pills like that dissolve fast, leave no obvious marks. The police thought drowning, didn't look deeper. But how does it tie to the paintings? Miss Marple's knitting needles clicked, her voice calm. The paintings, I believe, were Joyce's way of seeing the truth. She sensed Marjorie's fear, Dennis's falseness. The red stains, water turned to blood, were her intuition, showing a crime where none was seen. Like Mrs. Evans in our village, whose dreams warned her of her husband's betrayal. The heart sees what the eyes miss. Joyce stared at the canvases, the stains no longer frightening. So the stains were me? My way of knowing something was wrong? Miss Marple smiled. Exactly, dear. Artists see deeply. Your paintings caught Dennis's crime before anyone else did. Sir Henry rubbed his hands. Let's piece it together. Dennis poisons Marjorie with sleeping pills, probably in her morning tea or juice. She goes for a swim, drowsy, and drowns. The police call it an accident. Dennis flees, but leaves the pills behind.
The missing knife, was that part of this? Miss Marple tilted her head. I think so. Tom's telegram mentioned the knife was found in Dennis's luggage, too, hidden in a sock. My guess is he used it to crush the pills, to mix them into her drink without suspicion. Then he hid it, hoping to throw off anyone looking for a weapon. Mrs. Bantry's eyes widened. So the knife was a trick, to make people think of stabbing, not poison. Oh, he's wicked. Raymond grinned. Wicked and sloppy. Leaving the pills and knife behind? Not exactly a master criminal. Joyce's voice was quiet. Why did he do it? Why kill Marjorie? Miss Marple's needles paused. Tom's telegram had an answer for that, didn't it, Raymond? Raymond nodded, flipping open his notebook. Yes, Tom talked to Mrs. Tuttle, the innkeeper. She said Marjorie had been getting letters, secret ones, delivered to the inn. Dennis found one, and they fought about it the night before she died. Tom thinks Marjorie was planning to leave Dennis, maybe for someone else. Sir Henry whistled. Jealousy, just like Elsie Carter's story. Dennis couldn't stand losing her, so he acted. Miss Marple's eyes were gentle but firm. Human nature, you see, is predictable. Dennis, like many charming men, hid a controlling heart. Marjorie's fear, her flinching, it was because he knew he was dangerous. Joyce, your paintings saw it all. Joyce felt a lump in her throat. So Marjorie's death, I could have stopped it? Miss Marple shook her head. No, dear. You saw what no one else did, and you brought it to us. That's enough. The truth is out now. Raymond leaned forward. There's more. Tom says the police tracked Dennis to London. He was staying at a cheap hotel using a fake name. They arrested him this morning, charged with murder. The pills, the knife, the letters. It's enough to build a case. Mrs. Bantry clapped her hands. Justice! Oh, Joyce, your painting solved a murder. Dr. Haydock chuckled. Not quite, Dolly. They pointed the way, but the police did the rest. Still, it's remarkable. Joyce, you've got a gift. Joyce looked at the paintings, the stains now a symbol of truth, not fear. I didn't know what they meant, but I'm glad I brought them here. Miss Marple, how did you know it was poison? Miss Marple smiled, picking up her knitting. I didn't at first, but the stains, the drips, Marjorie's fear, it reminded me of stories from my village. People hide their crimes in plain sight, thinking no one will notice. Your paintings noticed, Joyce. Sir Henry grinned. Jane, you're a marvel. You turned a painter's mystery into a murder case. What's next? Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. Next, we let the police do their work. Dennis will face justice, and Marjorie can rest. As for us, we'll have tea and scones next Tuesday, and perhaps another story. The club laughed, the tension breaking like a wave. Joyce felt light, like a weight had lifted. The paintings, once a source of fear, were now her pride. They'd seen what no one else had, and with Miss Marple's help, they'd brought the truth to light. As the evening wound down, the club chatted about village gossip and old cases. Joyce sipped her tea, her eyes on Miss Marple, who knitted quietly, her face calm. The old woman had unraveled the mystery with nothing but sharp eyes and a knack for human nature. Joyce thought of St. Ives, the inn, the sea. It was beautiful, but it hid dark secrets. Her paintings had found them, and the club had made them clear. Joyce, Miss Marple said, looking up, keep painting. You have a rare gift, and next time you see something odd, come straight to us. Joyce smiled, her heart warm. "I will. Thank you, Miss Marple." As she walked home under the starry sky, the paintings tucked under her arm, Joyce felt at peace. The stains were solved, the killer caught, and the mystery closed. St. Mary Mead was quiet, its lanes soft and safe. Joyce knew she'd paint again, but for now she'd rest, knowing she'd helped uncover a truth that might have stayed buried. The Tuesday Night Club, with Miss Marple at its heart, had turned shadows into light, and Joyce was part of it.